If you're a collector, you already understand stewardship, preserving what matters, planning ahead, and passing things on the right way. That's exactly how Peristyle Wealth approaches financial planning. As the Ferrari Club of America's official wealth management partner, they help avid collectors who value resilience and attention to detail. And the founder, John Suarez, is active in the community. I've judged one of his cars before, and I see him at events all over the country. To learn more, go to peristylewealth.com. Peristyle Wealth advisory services offered through New Edge Advisors, LLC, a registered investment advisor.
Every garage is a mirror of the mind that builds it. The garage becomes a quiet dialogue between who you are and what you craft. A garage is where work becomes meditation and solace, where mechanical truth becomes mental clarity. Some people go to offices, some go to mountains, others go to garages. At Metron Garage, we build for people who do all three. Give us a call to get started.
If you own a collector car, you already know it deserves more than a standard insurance policy. NCM Insurance specializes in agreed value coverage designed specifically for classic collector and enthusiast vehicles. From weekend drivers to serious collectors, they understand how these cars are used, stored, and protected. To learn more about protecting your collector car the right way, visit ncminsurance.com. Coverage built for the cars you care about. Every car in your garage tells a story, where it's been, how it's been maintained, and what makes it truly yours. Carport gives you a simple digital garage to document, organize, and manage your vehicles all in one place. Track service history, store important records, and keep your collection dialed in with confidence. From your daily driver to your dream car, Carport keeps everything in order so you're always ready for the road. And best of all, it's free to use and is 100% private. To learn more, go to carport.app. All right, welcome to the Collector Car Podcast. As always, I'm very excited about this guest because this guest is someone who I've been following for years, not in a stalker way, but in a fan of car way. So I'd like to welcome Stephen Cox. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, thanks for having me on.
Well, and I mentioned following you because you've been with Mecum for years. You're not with them now, but I go to as many Mecum auctions as I can. You have quite the voice for radio and for TV. And so you're someone that I've known from afar for so many years, being a big car enthusiast and obviously quite an expert on many marques. So if you would, for my listeners here that may not know about your history, not only with Mecum, but racing, tell us a little bit about what you've been up to and then what you're up to today.
Well, I built my career as a racing driver and a motorsports television announcer from, I don't know, all the way back in the 1990s, I guess. And they just sort of paralleled each other. You know, I started out with hosting, it was a go-kart show called Saturday Night Lightning. And it was kind of like the
Wow.
parallel to Thursday Night Thunder on ESPN2.
Yep.
And so this goes back to the mid to late 1990s with Dave the King Wilson out of Indianapolis, who's just a great guy and has been a good friend ever since. And then that led to getting rides and getting sponsors, which led to, working with ABC at the Indianapolis 500, which led to probably 10 or 15 different shows across the spectrum of ESPN networks
Right.
and Speed Channel back in the day. You remember Speed Channel?
Yeah. Speed
Um,
Channel was it for a long
yeah,
time.
that was it. That was it, man. And then spent 9 years with the former Hooters Pro Cup series. And then after that, I was driving in the Hooters Pro Cup series and its successor, which was the Super Cup Stock Car Series. And so it's been a great ride. And from that point, I went on to Mecum Auctions. And we built that show up to where it was on NBC Sports, which was, really kind of where it absolutely peaked and was probably getting more viewers there than any place else it's ever been. And so it was just a great ride. It was a lot of fun. And so how that transitions into today was I left Mecum at the beginning of the 2024 season, and I had a huge racing schedule, a book that had just been optioned for a film, and most importantly, I was starting the Sopwith Watch Company. Oh, wait, there we go.
There we
And
go.
that's just now coming to fruition. We should have our first production run of watches done within just a few weeks, and that's been a big career change for me. So now I'm driving race cars and running Sopwith Watch Company full time. And what makes Sopwith Watch Company different is the entire case, the entire case of this watch is made from the armor cockpit plating of a German fighter manufactured in 1944. So
Wow.
all of our watches are made from special historic steel. So there you go. There's 25 years in 3 minutes.
That was expertly done. That was really, really good. But tell me about the watch first. What's the history on the name?
The history on the name is Sopwith on Thames, or the Sopwith Aviation Company, started out in the early part of the 20th century, around 1909, and they were in business until 1918. And after the war that made their company famous, they were essentially taxed out of existence by the very government that their airplanes helped save.
Wow.
And
Yes.
the Sopwith name just kind of hung out there. And so I acquired the name in the United States in the early 1990s and named my racing team, the Sopwith Motorsports racing team. And so now, a few years ago, when we originally got the concept for the watch company, it was just natural. We already owned the name in the United States, so it is Sopwith Watch Company.
That's awesome. That's great. And I love the fact, the materials you use have so much history to them, and I can imagine that being a huge, something really people really go after based on that, right?
Well, it's the only reason to buy our watch.
Right,
There,
right,
there
right.
are
There's a lot
other
of watches out
luxury.
there.
Yeah, there's a lot of watches out there, and there's a lot of very good watches out there. There are even a few companies that will take a piece of a famous airplane, a race car, something like that, and
Right.
incorporate it into an existing watch. There was no point in us doing that. So what I did was we pioneered a method of repurposing old steel so that this is not a tribute to a famous airplane. It's not. It doesn't commemorate or include a part of a Focke-Wulf FW-190. You're wearing the airplane on your wrist. You
That
can't
is
get
so
any
cool.
closer than that. And that's really the thrust of everything that Sopwith Watch Company does. Oh, Greg, you got to know this. You got to know this. Our second run of watches will not be from an airplane. They'll be from a race car.
Oh, what race car?
In in my garage right now, I have four rear gear sets from the Chrysler and Mopar stock cars by the King, Richard Petty,
Wow,
driven at
okay.
Talladega and Daytona in the late 60s and early 1970s. And I have just finished the design of this watch. It's going to be magnificent. And we actually spent a day over at Richard Petty's museum north of Charlotte, outside of
Hmm.
Charlotte in North Carolina. And I've got the King standing there with these on film with these four gear sets, and he's saying, "Yep, them there was on my core back in the day," in that familiar accent that we know and love, and the big 10-gallon hat.
Oh
So
yeah.
it's above reproach. That is straight from the King.
Now is there going to be a little petty blue mixed in there somewhere?
Petty blue and day glow orange, and it will be a very, very limited edition because we only have so much steel.
Sure.
There are watch companies out there that say, well, we're going to limit this edition to 200 or to 400 or to 1,000. Well, we only have so much steel.
Yeah.
They're not making any more Messerschmitt BF 109s. They're not making any more Richard Petty stock cars from the 1960s. What's there is there. I mean, they'll mine more gold next year to make watches out of, but there's not going to
Right.
be any more
Yeah.
Mopars that Petty drove at Talladega.
That's really amazing. And I love watches. I've gotten into them a lot, as of recently. And so seeing something like that is really cool because, like you said, it's limited based on the materials, not by some marketing reasoning.
It's not a marketing scheme. Exactly.
Right.
There's
Yeah.
only so much steel and it's impossible to get. And if this stuff, a lot of this is unobtainium. And I'll tell you, Greg, if I hadn't spent a lifetime researching World War I and World War II aviation, I've been to France 9 times with,
Mm.
a metal detector in one hand and a shovel in the other. And if I didn't spend a lifetime in motorsports and classic cars, you can't get this stuff.
So are you sourcing the metal with a metal detector on the shores
Some
of
of it.
Normandy or somewhere?
Some of it, yeah. I
Wow.
actually came up with some World War I steel that I actually dug out of France with my own two hands. And I'll tell you a great story. There's a friend of mine who lives in Latvia, and he's a big military guy, and he loves cars, and he loves watches too. And I've known him for a few years now, and he has a neighbor who owns a lot of acreage. Now, Western Latvia today is Western Latvia, west of Riga, but back in 1944, that was the site of where the last German army was pinned during its retreat out of Russia in the fall of 1944. And it's called the Battle of Courland Pocket. That's where it took place. Well, my buddy, his name's Davis. I just talked to him earlier this morning, and he was out there with a metal detector and on private property, and he got this huge hit. And he thought, well, man, what in the world is this? And so he starts digging, and he digs down like a foot, and he hadn't found anything yet. And he keeps digging, and he gets a foot and a half underground and hits a clunk. And so then he gets out the metal detector and he realizes he's getting hits all in a straight line for about 20 feet. And he thought, what in the world is this? And he dug it up. And you know what it was, Greg? It was the track tank, the tank
Oh, the
tracks,
treads.
the treads, the lengths of the tread from a German Panther 4 that was lost in action. And during the war, the shoulder fired weaponry, they would shoot for the wheels.
Hmm.
Because if you could break the tread, the tank would continue on and it would just lay that tread right down
Right,
into the
right
ground
out.
behind it, and then it would disable the tank. That's the only way it could have gotten there. And so
Wow.
I told him, I said, I want them all. Ship
Yeah,
all of
yeah.
them to me. So we have, I think, 8 surviving treads links from the track of a German Panther 4 lost at the Battle of Courland Pocket. So that's how I source this stuff myself and through some friends.
That's amazing. That's really cool because like you said, I know like Crash Jewelry, they source parts from wrecked 911 GT3s or whatever, but
Yep.
that's a cool model. That's a cool thing they're doing for sure, but there's not the history attached to it like what you're doing, which is very cool. And I feel like Breitling a couple years ago kind of messed it up. They had their motorsports collection, AC Cobra, Thunderbird, Mustang. I had a 65 Mustang at the time, and but I don't know of one Mustang owner that wants to spend $8,500 on a Breitling watch. I just didn't see the correct. Obviously, there's an aviation P51 connection, but for the average car enthusiast, that I don't see how that's. I think I just felt they missed their mark in the marketing perspective.
Yeah, and we're in the luxury range too.
Yeah,
Sopwith Watch Company is in that price range. We're $5,000 to $10,000, so we're definitely a luxury product. But the difference is we're preserving history.
yeah,
Whereas there are already companies like Breitling, and I'm not going to badmouth Breitling's a great watch. They
yeah,
are a
yeah,
great watch,
absolutely. Yep.
but you can already get a Swiss movement in-house, high quality, sapphire crystal from a top name brand from scores of companies out there right now. We didn't need to be another one. There was no point in doing that. So we wanted to do something that would fundamentally change case making in the watch industry. So that's why.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I must talk for those of you watching on YouTube. You've noticed I'm not in my normal studio. I'm actually in my 2014 Toyota FJ, and I am remote at Mecum, Indianapolis. And obviously, this is a great tie-in for your years with Mecum. And it sounds like you might be here later this week, so maybe we'll meet each other in person. That would be great. But
I hope so. I look forward to that. I mean, I'm going to go out and see Scott, and I was talking to Bill just a couple of days ago. So yeah, I got a lot of friends.
yeah, that's awesome. And so if you would give our like I love Mecum. Obviously, I was with RM Sotheby's for years. I still consult with them, but I love the auction house world. It's such a fascinating world. And Mecum has just done an unbelievable, every city they go to, they have 1,000, 1,200, 4,000 cars on offer. And stay tuned to this episode because I'm sharing some of the cars I found here I like, even one that I hope to bid on and win. But Can you give us a either a story or an insights or something interesting that maybe the average person doesn't know? Either, I just hung out with Dana Mecum, gave him my new book, or just Mecum in general. I mean, it's a road show, right? I mean, they're hopping around all over the country.
Yeah, it's a road show. So I'll tell you just two things off the top of my head, real quick. First of all, if you're working that show, if you were doing the job that I did there for 16 years, if people have these mental images of what it's like. What must it be like to follow Mecum or to follow a race series or something around the country? Man, it must just be such a rock and roll lifestyle, and it's got to be so cool. And you're going to these amazing venues, and everything that's in your head right now is actually what it is.
Hmm.
It was the gig of a lifetime, especially in the first 7 or 8 years of the show when the show was really powerful. It was really strong. You still had that core element of people on air and the core element of people who watched it, and there was a strong bond there. And a lot of that's changed in recent years, and television itself has changed in recent years. It's not the same as it used to be, but yeah, what you think in your head that job was like, this is exactly what it was. And the second thing is you find out that there are trends and fads in the collector car industry, just like there are anyplace else.
Hmm.
Look at a few years ago, the Bronco.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
couldn't get enough Broncos, and it didn't matter where they came from or what condition they were in, and people would jump on the bandwagon. And it's just like, Jordache jeans from like the 1980s
Yeah.
or 90s. I mean, it becomes its own thing and it lives its own life, and then it burns itself out. And we're seeing that with Fox Body Mustangs right now. And so you brace yourself for that because these trends will come and go. And I'm telling you, it's not, you hear complaints every now and then, Greg, that people will come on and they'll say, you know, it's those rotten auctions that are driving the prices up. Well, first of all, that's their job. Don't fault them for doing their job well. And secondly, that's not entirely true. There are trends, there are
Yeah.
fads, there are fashionable things that come and go in car collecting, just like anything else. And that's what really drives the price up.
Yeah. And you're a Fox body guy. You race Fox bodies?
I race Fox bodies. I own Fox bodies. I love Fox bodies. And my Fox body, my primary one the car of my life is Blue Thunder. It's a 1980 Fox body. And I just finished with a couple of friends of mine. Now, most of the mechanical work I don't do. I don't have a lift or, in any of my bays. I've got a 4 bay garage and I don't have a lift. Don't need one because I shouldn't be under a car anyway. I do better when
Right.
I'm inside
Right.
the car than under it. But
Right.
I decided that I wanted to do, with just some help from some friends here locally, I wanted to do the interior myself. And we're just wrapping that up. And a guy named Patrick Vetrano out in Colorado is just doing a magnificent job. He's rebuilding the frame to the sunroof because nobody makes sunroofs anymore. Not the old
Oh,
manual ones.
wow.
You can't find them. And I wanted to buy a replacement frame and there wasn't one. Patrick said, I'll fix that for you. And that's the last step. And we'll have the entire interior brand new, better than it was in 1980.
That's amazing that there's no more, you know, sunroofs. Because I remember my dad or I bought it from an old Geo Metro, and there was one of those cut-in sunroofs in the top, and you just pop it open. Now, what's your favorite Fox body Mustang, like your dream Fox body Mustang?
I really think that the 86 GT, I like the Four Eyes. And if you're
Yeah.
not a Mustang fan, the Fox bodies go from 79 to 93, and they were divided into two eras. The 79 to 86s were called the Four Eyes, and then because they had four headlamps,
Four eyes.
and
Yep.
then the 87 through 93s were called the Aero cars, AERO, because of the aerodynamic packaging that came on them. So I like the Four Eyes. I love them all, but I like the Four Eyes. And I think the 85 was a pivotal year, and 86 was probably the premium year. If you can get one of those 2 years, you're doing really well. The 79 pace cars are fantastic, and I love the look of the 1980 and 81 Cobras, but they were terrible performers.
Yeah, they
You
were.
know,
Yeah.
but the look they
Yeah.
had, if you remember back then, Greg, the way you made a car stylish was with all these 1980s era stickers There were decals
Yes.
all
Yeah.
over the cars. Remember that? Remember that? There were tone on tone decals. You got like two shades of orange or two shades of green. And I really like that look. It's a date stamp, I know, but I thought it was cool.
No, I love Fox bodies as well. The first V8 Mustang I ever drove, ironically, was an '86, red with the gray fabric interior. So I would love to have an '86. My senior year of high school, '89, two of my friends got '89 GTs as their present for graduating. One was black, one was white. The guy still has the black one. And I think the ultimate for me is I think it's a '93 last year of the Salines, and it was one of three, I think, SSCs, supercharged convertible. That would be the one I'd probably want. I love the Fox Body Salines. I don't care for the, SN95 Salines as much. I just thought the Fox Body, they really actually made the cars look better. It's so much the later generations, but they just really seem to do a good job on those. So,
But
yeah,
don't you think now is the time to buy your SN95 if you're a fan of the SN95s?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, SN95s, I think I'd get the Terminator. That'd be the one I'd want to get, So,
Yep, yep.
well, we don't want to geek
Or
out too much about Fox Bodies.
what about the Highland Green Steve McQueen Bullet Tribute? That was a neat car. Even as an SN95, that was a neat car. What year was it? A '01 they made that, I think.
Yeah, was that only green or did they have black as an option or was that only
They
the
no,
later
they
ones?
I think all of the Bullets had both options. You could get in the Highland Green or
Yeah.
black. Yeah,
Yeah, that
yeah,
would
that
be a
was a
cool
neat
one for
car.
sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. Now what's one thing that you miss about your time at Mecum now that you're quote unquote retired? You mentioned before we started recording that, part of the perks is you can get in any Mecum auction going forward, right? So obviously you missed something about them.
Yeah, I miss the camaraderie that was present in the early days of the show. Um, every show goes through a cycle, and this is not just talking about Meekum. This is every show I've ever been
Yes.
on. It goes through a
Yep.
cycle. You have the idea. The idea is really good. You go out and hire the people who can present that idea on air the way you want it presented. And the original mandate that we were given by the first producer, Terry Lingner and Randy Fishman, we were told, okay, what we want is four guys sitting in a garage with a beer in one hand and a car in front of you, and you're talking about it. That's the conversation we want. So that's what we tried to give them. And then, Katie came along a few years later, Katie Osborne, and was just part of the family very quickly. And that group carried the show and built it. And the camaraderie among that group of people, not just on camera, but the people behind the camera and in the truck as well, that group, I really, really miss that camaraderie. And that reached a peak. And then inevitably, what happens is you'll get executives and people that come into every show. I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about every show. And they'll say, yeah, but I want it to be a little bit different. And then they bring an idea on board and they're invested in it and it can't fail because it's their idea. And
Right.
then it starts to become a little different than it was. And then it's a little less recognizable. And then what do? Well, it's not what it used to be. We're not sure who to blame. So the most obvious people to blame are the people in front of the camera. So let's start there.
Right.
And then the show loses its recognizability. Every show, including motorsports shows that I've been on, a racing series that I've been on, they go through the same cycle. So the first half of that cycle was the joy that you really miss.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's really, coming back and seeing some familiar faces that you worked with for years, obviously the cars. So now, did you have a favorite Mecum auction while you were with? Was it Kissimmee? Was it Indy? Was it Monterey? Did you have a favorite location?
You're not going to believe what I'm going to tell you. It was Portland.
Now, why is that?
Yeah, exactly. That's what everybody wants to know. At Portland, we had our own parking space.
Mm,
And like at Kissimmee, they don't tell you this, but the talent has to walk in Florida heat probably between a quarter and a half a mile just to be able to get into
wow.
the building. And
Yeah.
then they want you to look fresh and crispy when you get on air. It's like it's 94 degrees outside. I just had to walk half a mile across concrete to get here. No, you're
Yeah.
not going to look fresh and crispy. You look like what
Yeah.
you are, exhausted. And
Yeah.
at Portland, the show was small. the people there was just an intimacy that you don't have at Kissimmee and some of the bigger venues. I love the people in Portland. The people that would come out and say hi to us, they were super,
Hmm.
super friendly. They'd stand there and wait for you to get done on camera and then say hi to you afterwards. And the intimacy of the setting made the logistical part of our jobs so much easier. You didn't
Yeah,
have to have a
right.
special pass. You had your own parking space. It was like a 10-foot walk to get into the back of the building. And as soon as you got in the building, you didn't have to walk for another quarter mile to get where you were going. Logistically, it was an easy job to do, and the people there were fantastic.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. I love Portland too. I was actually there earlier this year. It's a beautiful place.
Yep. Yep.
Now, what about the prep aspect? You can't be an expert on every car. Obviously, you know your Fox bodies, but did you do a lot of prep? Did you run through the auction catalog, write down a bunch of notes? Like how'd that work behind the scenes? Because I know that was a lot.
Yeah, your prep starts probably when you're about 6 years old. You know,
Oh, so I'm well prepped. Okay.
there's no way to get ahead of that curve. You're either
Yeah,
on it or you're behind it. But really the key for us, and if you look back at the original cast to the show, you had Brad Brown, who came and went very quickly, and then Scott took his place in just the first series of shows. So Scott goes all the way back almost to the beginning. And Scott didn't need to know a lot. In fact, they didn't really want him to know a lot. His job was to drive the bus, to keep everybody on course. John had to know a little bit about everything, John Craman.
yeah,
And then Bill, but I mean, John, he's a Pontiac guy.
yeah,
He was a huge Corvette guy, and he could carry that. And so whenever one of those cars came up, there's no point in me or Bill or anybody else adding anything.
yeah.
Let the guy do what he does. He's got a specialty. Let him do it. And then Bill is just a genius when it comes to a lot of the Chrysler products and especially drag racing. Anything to do with drag racing, he's so passionate about it. And I covered basically all other forms of auto racing, as well as the Ford Torino and the Gran Torino series and the Mustang series. So everybody had their specialty. And there wasn't much that we couldn't cover. When something came up, we had somebody on our team who was very, very knowledgeable. They weren't just a TV person. I owned two Torinos. I owned a bunch of Mustangs. I had experience with these cars. So I didn't need to talk about Corvettes. Bill's owned 13 of them. I
Yeah,
didn't
that's
need to
nice.
talk about
Yeah.
Pontiacs. John grew up in a family where they sold Pontiacs at a dealership. So it was easy.
Yeah, that's great because, after whatever it is, 400 episodes of my podcast, I like digging into everything, but there's still areas I haven't dug into yet because there's a lot of stuff out there and nobody can be an expert on everything. So it's nice that you have
No, no.
four of you there that could kind of, get the right information out at the right time as those cars are crossing the block. So that's
It,
very,
it
very cool.
was it was four hand-picked guys by the original producers of the show, and they caught magic in a bottle, and you're not getting it back.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. Well, now where can my listeners find you and learn more about your watch company?
Well, you can go to sopwithwatch.com. I don't know if this shows on camera or not. Hang on, there it is.
Yep, there
Just
you
like it
go.
sounds. Go to sopwithwatch.com, and then you can also follow me, Stephen Cox, on Facebook, and as well as X and most of the other major platforms. And everything to do with Sopwith Watch Company is on the website, and a lot of behind the scenes stuff, as well as my continuing active racing career, is on the social media platforms. So that's where you can find me.
That's awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining the Collector Car podcast today, Stephen.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on, Greg.